So our final lesson that is going to be contained on the quiz is solving radical equations. So what we need to do here is solving radical equations. First thing we need to do is we have to get the radical expression alone. We have to get it all by itself. And obviously by the radical expression, what we're talking about is just what is inside the radical sign. So what we see right there. So what we need to do in this case here is I have to get this plus 7 out of there. So like we've been solving equations all year, to get rid of that plus 7, I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides, and I'll end up with radical a plus 5 equals 5. Now from here what I have to do is I have to get rid of that radical. Okay, and the opposite of that square root sign, the radical, is the exponent of 2, squaring. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to square both sides, and we have to make sure that it's both sides that are squared. Once I do that, the radical disappears, and 5 squared is 25. Now I'm left with a simple one-step equation where I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and I'll find that the value of a in this case is going to be 20. Okay, and if I want to check my answer, I can substitute that value in for a. 20 plus 5 is 25. Square root of that is 5. 5 plus 7 equals 12. So in this case right here, I have a radical on both sides. However, both radicals are isolated, and this is what you're going to see. If you have a radical on both sides, you will not have any isolating to do. So in this case, radical on both sides, first thing I have to do, eliminate the radicals. I'm going to do that by squaring both sides. Once I do that, all I'm left with is what was inside the radicals. Now, multi-step equation, get all my variables on the same side, add 8 to both sides, and I'll find that x equals 12. Now once again, I take my solution, I substitute it in, and this is something that you need to do for every solution you get, because there's something called an extraneous solution. Okay, an extraneous solution is a solution that you get by solving an equation. However, it is not the solution, meaning when I substitute it in, that value does not come out. Okay, so with this extraneous solution, we need to check to make sure this truly is my solution. If it's not, I'm going to say there's no solution. So in this case here, I get 2 times 12, which is 24, plus 4 would get me radical 28. Okay, now you're probably thinking right now, well, I don't even know what that is. Okay, just keep it as radical 28. Let's go on the other side. 3 times 12 is 36, minus 8 is radical 28. So, radical 28 equals radical 28. I don't need to simplify. I just know that this right here is a solution. Okay, I'm going to give you an example now where you're going to see that there is an extraneous solution. So, we'll do that one next. Alright, so in this problem here, we should know by now, first thing I got to do is subtract 12 from both sides. I'm going to get the square root of 3x equals negative 10. Okay, so our next step obviously would be to square both sides. And when we square both sides, what we're going to find is we're going to get 3x equals positive 100, because when we're squaring, remember, we're going to treat it as if it is, I'm squaring the entire negative 10. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I'll find the value of x is 33.3 repeating. So now, with this, I substitute my value in to check this solution right here, and you have to do this every single time. So when I substitute this in, I'm going to end up with 12 plus the square root of 100 equals 2. Now, when we do these, all we're taking right here is we are going to take the positive value. So when you find So with this one right here, right, we're always going to take only the primary square root. So we're not going to take the negative square root. When we do these, we're only taking the primary square root when we check our answer. Basically meaning this will be 12 plus positive 10 equals 2. We know it does not. So this 33.3 repeating is an extraneous solution. So at that point, I have no other solutions. So I'm just going to say this one is no solution. Okay? And you'll see a couple of those pop up from time to time. I'll give you a little hint. You're going to have at least one on the quiz. So let me give you one other example where something's going to pop up here that we've seen before, and some of you are probably going to be like, oh no, not that, but we'll see. Alright, so this scenario here, again, same thing, we have our radical isolated, so now I have to square both sides. Once I do that, I have x squared equals 2x plus 3. By now some of you are saying, how do we solve that? Well, if we remember last unit, we do know how to solve this. This is a quadratic, and with this quadratic, we should hopefully know that I can use a quadratic formula, I can factor it, use completing the square, whatever it might be. So I'm going to factor this one, which basically means that I'm going to move these two terms over to that side, and I'll do it by subtracting them. So I'll end up with x squared equals negative 2x minus 3. Hold on here. So with this, that's what it'll be once I get it all on the same side. So I have x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. I know I can easily factor these, and again, if you'd rather use a quadratic formula or any other method, do that. So I know that to factor these, I'm going to have minus 3 and plus 1. So now I have my two equations, x minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides, and over here I will subtract 1 from both sides. So my solutions will be 3 and negative 1. So once again, we need to check these, make sure they are not extraneous solutions. So when I do that, let's start with this 3. I'll substitute that in. So if you recall, only this right here was my original. Okay? So I'll substitute the 3 in. So with that, I'm going to have 3 equals the square root of 2 times 3, which is 6, plus 3. We know the square root of 6 plus 3, or 9, is 3. So I know that definitely is a solution. So let's check this negative 1. So if I substitute negative 1 in, what I'm going to see here is that I will have negative 1 equals the square root of 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2 plus 3, which in this case will get me negative 1 equals the square root of 1, which remember we only want to take the positive or the primary square root. So it's going to get me negative 1 equals 1, which we know they don't. So this one is an extraneous solution. So my only solution would be this right here. So make sure every single solution is substituted back into the equation to ensure that you have the right answer. If it doesn't work, if it's your only solution, we go back to the previous problem, we would say it's no solution. If there are multiple solutions like we have here, because we had to use a quadratic for the simple fact that we had that exponent right there, we would know that I'm only going to use the one that works. Okay, so make sure you check these, make sure that you understand that either one or none work. We'll go from there.